Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going on a journey, a deep dive into classical history to uncover the absolute truth about one of the most famous, most widely recognized figures in the entire world. I mean, we're talking about a ruler whose influence was so vast, he literally made it into the German chronicles during the reign of Emperor Charlemagne as Aaron, and at the exact same time, he was documented in Chinese and Indian chronicles as Alan. We are, of course, talking about Harun al-Rashid. But here's the thing. The man you might think you know, he could be completely different from the man who actually lived.
Okay, let's dive into this massive misconception right away. Because for centuries, tales like the 1001 Nights have painted this highly fictionalized, pleasure-seeking caricature of the guy. You know the one. An escapist king, drowning in excessive luxury, wine, and dancers. Well, we need to explicitly reject that false image today. When we actually look at the historical facts from classical sources, we see a totally different reality. We're looking at a pious worshiper, a brilliant intellectual leader, a fearless warrior, and honestly, the primary architect of the Islamic Golden Age.
So, that brings us to the ultimate question. Who is the real Harun al-Rashid? I want you to just leave all those preconceived notions from pop culture and fairy tales at the door right now. Instead, we're going to rely entirely on the meticulous records of classical historians, guys like al-Tabari, al-Dahabi, and Ibn Khaldun, to uncover the truth.
Chapter 1. The Golden Age Caliph. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is his timeline, which you really have to understand to grasp his monumental reign. He was born in the city of Ray in the year 149 of the Hijri calendar to his mother Al-Khayzuran. Then, in 170 AH, he assumed the immense, crushing weight of the entire Abbasid Empire at just 22 years old. 22! This was right after the death of his brother Musa al-Hadi. It's actually recorded that around this time he was guided by a profound dream of the Prophet Muhammad, who basically instructed him to take up the mantle of leadership, to fight for the empire, and to give generously in charity. And he carried that massive responsibility on his shoulders until his death in Tus at the age of 45.
And during his reign, he achieved a level of security and prosperity that was practically unprecedented. He wasn't just sitting in some palace. He actively deployed these vast intelligence networks to ensure public safety. And he was even known to personally roam the markets and public gatherings in disguise. He wanted to hear the unfiltered truth directly from his people, just to make sure his subjects were being treated fairly and justly. Under his rule, the empire expanded massively, wealth was absolutely abundant, and he officially ushered in what historians universally call the Islamic Golden Age.
Chapter 2. A Life of Devotion. To really understand his public success, we have to look closely at his private life. 100. Think about that number for a second. According to the historian Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, Harun al-Rashid prayed 100 rak'ahs, units of Islamic prayer, every single day of his life. The only exception was if he was physically ill. This wasn't just some passing phase. This was a daily, lifelong habit of intense personal discipline and devotion.
And then there's this staggering number, 1,000. Every single day, he gave 1,000 dirhams in charity. And get this didn't come from the public treasury. No, this came directly out of his own personal wealth. Every single day. The historian al-Masudi recorded the years Harun al-Rashid performed the Hajj pilgrimage, and honestly, it's an overwhelming list. But the details surrounding it are even more fascinating. If there was a year he didn't go on Hajj, he paid all the expenses for 300 people to go in his place. And when he did go, he took 100 scholars and their sons with him, fully funding their journey. During one of his pilgrimages, it's actually recorded that he walked completely barefoot all the way from his residence to the plains of Arafat.
Just picture that for a second. The most powerful man in the world, standing barefoot on the rough gravel of Arafat. Witnesses describe him trembling, weeping intensely as he raised his hands and recited these exact words. O Lord, you are you and I am I. I am the one who returns to sin and you are the one who returns to forgiveness. Forgive me. I mean, that is the true, raw humility of the man that those myths tried to erase.
Let's move to Chapter 3, Champion of the Scholars, and see how this builds.
Because his private worship seamlessly translated into a massive public reverence for religious knowledge. Classical scholars actually note that he was the only king known to literally pack up and travel for the specific purpose of seeking religious knowledge. He journeyed alongside his two sons, Al-Amin and Al-Mamun, specifically to sit and study the famous text, the Muwatta, directly under the legendary scholar Imam Malik. He respected scholars so deeply that when the great ascetic and scholar Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak passed away, the Caliph publicly sat in a formal mourning session to receive condolences from the people.
Chapter 4. The Letter to Rome. We've now arrived at one of the most explosive, defining moments of his entire reign, the climax of his military legacy in 187 AH. To set the scene for you, a peace treaty had been firmly established between the Muslims and the Byzantine Empire under the previous ruler, Empress Irene. But in 187 AH, a new emperor takes the throne in Rome. His name is Nicephorus. And Nicephorus, he viewed Empress Irene's treaty and her payment of tribute as an unforgivable sign of female weakness, so he immediately decides to shatter the peace treaty.
Nicephorus sends a highly arrogant, inflammatory letter directly to Harun al-Rashid. It reads, "The empress who was before me placed you in the position of a rook, and herself as the position of a pawn. Return the wealth, or the sword is between us." Wow. When Harun al-Rashid read this brazen insult, historical accounts say his fury was so intense, so physically terrifying, that his courtiers and ministers literally fled from his presence in absolute fear. No one even dared to look at his face, let alone speak to him. So, how exactly did the Caliph respond? Just imagine the tension in that room. You are the most powerful man on the planet, and a newly minted emperor has just openly threatened you with the sword.
Well, he didn't even ask for a fresh piece of parchment. He called for an inkwell, flipped Nicephorus's own letter over, and wrote directly on the back of it. His legendary response, "In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, from Harun, commander of the faithful, to Nicephorus, the dog of Rome. I have read your letter, O son of an infidel. The answer is what you see, not what you hear."
And this brilliantly illustrates the kind of leader he was. He wasn't just talk. He didn't wait around. Immediately after writing that furious response, Harun al-Rashid personally marched out at the head of a massive, unstoppable army. The winds of his anger preceded him all the way to Byzantine territory. He laid siege to and completely conquered the famous city of Heraclea in a brilliant military victory. The result? Emperor Nicephorus, who had just threatened him with the sword, was forced into a humiliating surrender and had to commit to paying a heavy annual tribute. He literally forced Rome to bow.
Chapter 5. Death on the Battlefield.
Even his passing reflects his true, unyielding warrior spirit. As recorded by the great historian al-Suyuti, Harun al-Rashid didn't die lounging on silk pillows in some decadent palace like the fairy tales would have you believe. No, he died in the year 193 AH at the young age of 45 in Tusk, Khorasan. And he died exactly as he lived, actively in the field, on a military campaign as a mujahid fighting to protect and expand the empire.
So the crucial point is this. Everything we've covered today, his piety, his immense charity, his deep respect for scholarship, and his fearless military leadership, none of it comes from folklore. It comes directly from the highest, most rigorously authenticated tiers of classical historical scholarship. Historians like al-Tabari, al-Dahabi, Ibn Khalikan, al-Suyuti, and al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, they all corroborate the true character of this legendary caliph.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply important question to consider. Why do we allow completely fictional, sensationalized tales to overshadow the true giants of our history? Harun al-Rashid was a man whose reality was far more fascinating, inspiring, and powerful than any fictional story ever written about him. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other incredible historical narratives have we absorbed from pop culture that desperately need to be re-examined? Thank you so much for joining me in uncovering the truth today, and I hope this explainer inspires you to dive deeper into the real, documented history of the world.